Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has made a shocking claim that 25 million Iranians have contracted COVID-19. The official government figures indicate that Iran has recorded just over 260,000 cases, but the figures quoted by the president is almost 96 times higher than his own government's data. Rouhani has attributed his figures to a new report by the country's health ministry. The president did not, however, address the discrepancy between the two versions. Rouhani also said that in addition to the 25 million people already infected, 35 million others are at risk of contracting COVID-19 in the near future.
These aren't Mexican government forces. Instead, this video appears to show someone else's army. El Mencho, they're saying, the alias of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The video hasn't been authenticated, but it showed up online just as the president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, was touring the group's heartland, and it seemed to send a straightforward message.
This video showing the overwhelming armed strength of the Jalisco cartel. Cartels have a tactic which we could call violent lobbying. Violent lobbying is using violence against the state, against government forces, to push forward their agenda.
Now, KZN Transport MEC Begin Tulis has called for an investigation into an accident that killed two teenage girls. They were run over by a convoy in KwaNongoma's municipal mayor. The girls were 12 and 13 years old. Now, reporter Tuba Vilane has more on that story.
Yes, we're here on the Nongoma-Hlabisa route where a tragic incident happened on Thursday night. We understand that the motorcade that had just dropped the mayor was driving from this side, going up on this direction, and on that side where the taxi is driving, that's where the incident happened, where it ran over two teenage girls. I understand that they both, or in fact one age 13 and the other one is age 12 years.
French prosecutors say they're questioning a man in connection with an arson probe into a fire at one of the country's most famous Gothic cathedrals. The blaze began Saturday morning in the western city of Nantes. No one was injured, but it took firefighters several hours to bring the situation under control.
The flames blew out stained glass windows and destroyed the cathedral's grand organ. Passers-by called the emergency services shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning. Scores of firefighters beat back the blaze that threatened to engulf the 15th century building. French Prime Minister Jean Castex arrived in Nantes, saying he was there to show solidarity with the city.
You've got the so-called Frugal Four, Netherlands, Austria, Denmark, and Sweden, who are opposed to both the size of this coronavirus rescue fund and the fact that it would mostly be made up of grants that don't have to be paid back by individual EU countries. Instead, the EU as a whole would borrow the money on the international markets as if it was a country using the credit of all EU member states. But the Netherlands in particular is also opposed to the governance of the fund. They want every request for this aid to be subject to unanimous approval by all 27 EU countries. They are alone in that, and EU leaders say that's not only impractical, but also unfeasible.
Masks are already mandatory on public transport in France, but from Monday, people will be required to cover their mouths and noses when in enclosed public spaces, such as all shops. Many establishments in Paris already have a strict mask policy. One clothing store owner wonders why the measures weren't enforced sooner. Shopkeepers believe the new rule will make it easier to enforce the wearing of masks on customers who are apprehensive about wearing one.
Older children spread COVID-19 just as much as adults. That's according to a study of nearly 65,000 people in South Korea carried out by a team that includes KCDC Director Jung Eun-kyung and the Emergency Response Center's Park Young-jun. Children younger than 10 transmit to others much less often than adults do, but the risk is not zero. Those between the ages of 10 and 19 can spread the virus just as easily as adults. Several experts warn the findings suggest as schools reopen, communities will see cluster infections among children of all ages.
United States Navy may have resumed what are being described as exercises in the disputed region. Now, this is the second time this month that the US's ships have now entered into the contested waters. Two U.S. aircraft carriers, the USS Nimitz and USS Ronald Reagan, were seen conducting high-end dual carrier exercises in these waters. In the latest statement, the U.S. Pacific Fleet has said that they are conducting what are described as tactical air defense exercises that are aimed at maintaining war-fighting readiness and proficiency of the forces. The Pentagon chief has also said that the United States Navy is conducting freedom of navigation operations so that other nations will respect those laws in these troubled waters.
On July 18th, the Three Gorges Dam received the largest water inflow since the beginning of this year due to heavy rainfall in Chongqing, Sichuan, and other areas in the upper reaches of the Yangtze River. According to China's regulations on the numbering of major rivers, this meets the standard for the flood to be assigned a number. The Three Gorges Dam water level has increased by 8.04 meters over the past 2 days. After the Chinese official media reported on July 17th that the Yangtze River flood number 2 of 2020 had formed in the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, the Three Gorges Reservoir's water level rose rapidly reaching 61,000 cubic meters per second at 8 a.m. on the 18th. At 6 p.m. on July 18th, the water level in the Three Gorges Reservoir had reached 163.59 meters, more than 18.59 meters above the flood limit.
Bitter tensions with the West, Russia has been expanding the scope of its military drills. Russian President Vladimir Putin has now ordered a massive snap military drill. Around 150,000 troops are involved in these massive drills. Take a look in this report.
Tanks on the move, a huge military exercise, a show of strength and might. And 106 Navy ships will be involved. The troops will train at 35 shooting ranges. According to the Defense Ministry, the exercise aims at training the troops to defend against terrorist threats in the country's southwest.